A tax that shares the bounty of the mining boom among all Australians, or a money go-round so badly built that it will cost more than it raises. The political divide over the Gillard government's mining tax couldn't be wider, but the tax will soon become law, and shortly I'll speak with one of the billionaires who'll have to pay it, Clive Palmer. Labor's built its sales pitch around what the tax will buy: a better retirement for 8 million Australians and a cut in the company tax rate with a head start for small business. But the coalition says the sums don't add up, and the Greens will back the tax cut for small business, but not for the big end of town. Political editor Heather Ewart reports on the battle for the spoils of the boom.
This is proof that Mr Abbott has become so negative that he's now planning to vote against tax cuts for small businesses, vote against jobs and vote against the Australian economy.
A tax cut that's paid for by a tax increase is not a cut, it's a con.
Why on earth would we want to be giving back to the corporate sector $2.4 billion?
The battle lines were drawn today after the Greens and the opposition declared they'd join forces to knock out a key element of the government's mining tax legislation: tax relief for businesses with an annual turnover of $2 million or more.
I never thought I would see the day that the Liberal Party would join with the Greens to vote against a tax cut for business. That's what Mr Abbott has announced today.
What we've said very consistently ever since the government first announced the mining tax is that we don't support the new tax and we don't support the measures associated with the new tax.
The Greens will be able to, on current indications, prevent the tax cut from going to the wealthy corporate sector, but ensure that it still goes to small business.
Jeff and Helen, who run the show.
How are you, Jeff?
The Greens will only support promised tax relief for small business, but the opposition will vote against that too. Little wonder that Tony Abbott and Julia Gillard both descended on hapless small businesses in Canberra this morning to insist one had the sector's interests at heart more than the other.
Yes, so welcome to Smith's Alternative Bookshop. Here it is.
I'm here today to announce that we will create a small business commissioner. This is another step forward in our partnership with small business.
It's a very good place to be at the moment for small business, and we expect a lot more to come over the next few months.
On the face of it, Julia Gillard looked to have small business eating out of her hand. Not so, said Tony Abbott, anxious to reassure them he still cared.
What you'll get under us are tax cuts without new taxes. What you're getting under Labor are tax cuts that are funded by new taxes and a tax cut that's paid for with a tax increase. It's not a real cut.
Tony Abbott has confirmed today that he's going to vote against successful companies. He's going to vote against a prosperous economy. He's going to vote against something that is good for every single Australian. This is the negativity of the opposition at its worst.
Well, I say the relentless negativity must stop, and it's time for this government to get on with the business of governing.
But Tony Abbott once again looks as though he's giving out mixed signals when it comes to economic management. Does he support business or not? Last year, the opposition signalled it would vote against the mining tax, but back the related company tax cuts as a core Liberal principle. This has now been reversed, and at least one major business group is perplexed at the latest developments.
We have an awful lot of companies in Australia, tens of thousands of them, hundreds of thousands in fact, that are on the wrong side of this mining boom. And the Greens are now trying to carve out larger companies, which are, it's not just a few companies, it'll be tens of thousands of companies that will be affected by the Greens carve out. But we've also urged the opposition to have a good hard look at this, because it is very important we assist the Australian economy to make the adjustment, and a competitive corporate tax rate is certainly a big part of that.
Thrown into the mix is a degree of uncertainty about the opposition's pledge at the last election to cut company tax by 1.5%.
It will be a modest cut. We took a 1.5% cut to the last election. There will be a modest cut that we're taking forward at the next election.
Are you potentially flagging that it will be lower than 1.5% then? You're saying modest, but not committing to 1.5%.
I'm just saying that we will be taking a corporate tax cut to the next election, and it will be fully costed and it will be fully funded.
We stand too for...
In the Parliament, the government sensed it was on to a winner, even if a key element of its mining tax package was heading down the tube.
The choice is to share the mining boom and benefit business, or to betray businesses and benefit billionaires. We know where the Leader of the Opposition stands.
Why is he constantly saying no, Mr Speaker? Well, because he believes that Gina Rinehart and Clive Palmer should get a tax cut, not struggling Australian small businesses, Mr Speaker.
But the defeat of legislation providing tax cuts to big business does now free up money for the government to spend in other areas or fill budget shortfalls.
This $2.4 billion in future years is going to be extremely important for delivery of better health and education and other public services.
Late today, surprise, surprise, a government-dominated parliamentary committee recommended the Senate pass the mining tax, and a dissenting report from the opposition argued otherwise.
This tax is so fundamentally flawed that no amount of amendments can fix it. The government should scratch this tax. This tax should not be supported by the Senate in the coming days, and the government should be forced to start from scratch.
The mining tax legislation is due to go to a vote early next week.
Political editor Heather Ewart.